This episode of Lex Out Loud is brought to you by the patrons of Starwalker Studios. Learn how you can support the show at lexstarwalker.com/support. Hello and welcome to episode 40 of Lex Out Loud, writing science fiction. I'm your host, Lex Starwalker. This is a podcast for writers, readers, and all lovers of speculative fiction. I'm writing my third novel and taking you along for the ride. November is National Novel Writing Month, and for many writers, that means the NaNoWriMo competition. This week, I'm going to go against the grain, play devil's advocate, and discuss why NaNoWriMo might not be the way you want to celebrate November. But before we get into that, I thought I would give you a quick update on how I'm doing with my novel, since I don't think I talked about it at all last episode, and I just recently did an episode about how I changed my word count goal and how that was working very well for me. So I just wanted to give you a quick update in case you were wondering if that's still working. And in a word, yes, it is. It's working very well. I'm still doing 1,000 words per day consistently. I haven't missed a day yet. Most days I do significantly more than 1,000 words. And there's been a few days in the past couple weeks that I've gotten pretty close to 3,000 words. So kicking ass and taking names as far as the daily writing. I'm also writing 6 days a week now instead of 5. So the last time I talked about this, I recorded on a Thursday and I said I could guarantee you that I would write that next Friday, which I did the next day. And I was going to try and write Saturday, but I wasn't guaranteeing that I would do it. And that was last week. And I did it. I wrote on Saturday. Well, I should say that was last week at the time of recording. I'm trying to get ahead again on my episodes a little bit. But yeah, that was last Saturday, and I did write on Saturday. I did do my 1,000 words. I don't remember how many exactly I did, but it was quite a bit more than 1,000 words. Most days these days is quite a bit more than 1,000 words. The train is really rolling now. And yeah, so I'm going to do that again this week. I'm recording this on a Friday, and I wrote all 5 days this week, Monday through Friday, at least 1,000 words. One of those days I was even at the Toyota dealer getting my car worked on, and I did my writing there and got, I think it was like 1,800 words while my car was getting fixed, which was awesome. And I'm going to talk more about that in a future episode. I'm going to do some episodes about best practices when it comes to actually writing your manuscript and the software you use and keeping backups and all that kind of stuff. So as part of that, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the experience I had writing at Toyota and how I now know that I can pretty much write almost anywhere, as long as there's Wi-Fi. Even if there's not, I can write pretty much anywhere, but especially if there's Wi-Fi, I can write anywhere just as well as I write at home, and I have everything that I have at home, which is pretty awesome. So yeah, I've been doing 6 days a week, 1,000 words a day, and yeah, going strong. Today's Friday, got every weekday this week down, and I plan to work or write and work tomorrow, Saturday. And yeah, so from here on out, it's 6 days a week. I briefly thought about doing 7 days a week, and one day I probably will. I do think there's something to be said, at least when you're doing the first draft of a book, to not have any days off and just keep going and keep everything really fresh in your mind. But I'm at a point in the book right now where I'm less and less sure what's coming next. And actually the last 2 weeks, every single day I sat down to write, I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to do. And I was worried that I wasn't going to get my 1,000 words just because I didn't know what I was going to do or where I was going. I've been pretty much completely discovering writing the last couple weeks. But luckily, so far every day, once I start typing, like things come to me and I've been trucking along. But it is nice to have that one day off on Sunday to kind of rest and recharge and have a little time to plan what I'm going to do next week as far as where the story's going to go. So yeah, I mean, I take Sunday off as far as putting words to the manuscript, but I still think about what I'm doing and write some handwritten notes about what I think I'm going to do in the following scenes and stuff like that. So I'm still working on it. I never really take a true day off, but I'm not actually writing on Sundays right now. As of recording, I'm up to 67,000 words on the first draft. And I also today, I decided to adjust my kind of soft target for the first draft from 120,000 words down to 115,000 words. And that is something that I will talk about in a little more detail in a future episode. I'm going to do an episode all about word counts for novels and the various genres and kind of where you want to be and why being within those recommended word counts is of utmost importance. Unless you're already an established writer, in which case you're probably not listening to this podcast anyway. But if you're someone like me trying to get your first debut novel published, yeah, you want to know all about those word counts. So I'll talk about that in a future episode. But yeah, I changed it to 115,000 words after being a little over halfway through the book now. I decided that's where I should be. And kind of just briefly, part of the reason for that is that for science fiction, which is what I'm writing, for a debut novel, you want to be somewhere between 100,000 and 115,000 words, ideally. You can go a little shorter than that. You can maybe get away with 90,000, but not any less than that. You can go a little longer. You can maybe get away with 120,000, but not any more than that. But 100 to 115,000 is kind of the sweet spot. And I think that when I do the second draft and the following revisions, I will probably cut a good amount of the first draft out because it did get me a little bit to get going, which is pretty common, I think. So I think there's a lot of material in the first few chapters that I will ultimately cut out. So that will decrease the word count a bit. But at the same time, and you know, I'm kind of going with Stephen King's guideline of trying to cut 10% from the first draft when you do your revision. But something that's kind of going against that a little bit is that at least the way I write, or at least the way I'm writing this first draft, is I'm not putting a lot of descriptions in it. You know, if I'm writing a scene and I have a description that just comes to mind, I will put it in there. But I don't really make any effort to describe things. I'm focused more on the dialogue and the action, what's happening, and just getting the scene across. And I did my last novel this way too. And then in the second draft, as I'm editing it, I'm on the lookout for anything that I'm not describing that I think I should. And then I will add more descriptions in the second draft. So I'm not sure how much that's going to cancel out the 10% I want to cut out. So, you know, I'm not sure where the second draft will end up in comparison to the first draft as far as how many words. I'm sure it won't be any longer, but I'm not sure how much shorter it will be. So I decided that shooting for 120,000 words for the first draft was probably too high because I don't want to end up with it being too long. And I'd much rather be closer to the low end of that 100 to 115,000 word range than the high end, because I'd rather the book be shorter and be as tight as it can be. And there's something to be said for doing that, because you're showing an editor that you can cut stuff out and kill your darlings and things like that, if you're not hitting the maximum of your allowed word count. So yeah, my ideal, if I could just do exactly what I wanted to do, my final draft would be about 105,000 words. That's where I really want to be at the end of the game. So yeah, I thought 115,000 was a good target for the first draft to get me there. But again, I'm going to go into more detail about all that stuff in a later episode. So when this episode comes out, it will be I believe the first Monday of November, 2021. And November, as I said at the top of the show, is National Novel Writing Month. So it's a great month to be writing a novel, and a way that a lot of people, writers anyway, or at least some writers, I guess it depends on how you define a lot, but there are a number of writers who celebrate November by doing NaNoWriMo, which NaNoWriMo just is short for National Novel Writing Month. But usually when people talk about NaNoWriMo, they're talking about the NaNoWriMo competition. So what that is, really briefly, basically the challenge for the NaNoWriMo competition is during the month of November to start a new novel and to write 50,000 words in the month of November. And I guess the idea is that you're writing a novel in November, but 50,000 words is actually nowhere near a novel, but we'll get more to that later. First, though, before I get into this, the disclaimer, before the emails start flying. As I said at the top of the show, I don't know if it's really right to say I'm playing devil's advocate, because I feel like that conveys that you're arguing something you don't necessarily agree with just to be contrary or just to show the opposing point of view. And I do actually believe all the arguments I'm making today, at least for me personally. So I guess I'm not really being devil's advocate, but I am going against the grain here because in November, I'm sure there's going to be tons of blog posts and podcast episodes and YouTube videos about NaNoWriMo and how to do it and why you should do it and why it's so wonderful and all that. And so that's being done and will be done to death. So I'm someone who actually doesn't do NaNoWriMo. I've never done it. I probably never will. Well, I almost can guarantee I will never do it unless the way I write really changes sometime in the future and I just become a machine or something. But it's just not right for me. And honestly, I don't think it's right for a lot of people. I would even hazard a guess that it's not right for most novel writers. But you don't hear much of that during November. You just hear all this sunshine and roses about NaNoWriMo and everybody should do it. And so I'm going to present the opposing view. So first, the disclaimer. It's not really my intent to bash on NaNoWriMo and just say it's a horrible thing. I'm really just here to talk about why it's not right for me and why it may not be right for you. And I think maybe that's something you haven't heard much of. At least I haven't heard much of it. I have occasionally heard a writer say that they don't do it and it's not for them, but it's not really something I recall hearing expounded on very much. And also why I'm looking for an alternative, because I like the idea of having a month to celebrate writing a novel, and I would love to be part of a community that's doing that, which is part of the appeal of NaNoWriMo. But NaNoWriMo itself, the way it's set up and its whole philosophy doesn't jive with me. So if I could find something that more works for me, that would be awesome and would be something I'd really love to participate in. So maybe there's something like that out there. I asked on Twitter if anyone knew of anything and didn't get anything back on that. But maybe someone listening to this episode will know of something else that would fit my needs better and others who are like me. Or maybe someone will be inspired to start something like that, something a little more realistic and something that would better serve a greater percentage of novel writers, especially beginning novel writers, which I believe is supposedly what NaNoWriMo is supposed to be for primarily, a lot better than NaNoWriMo actually does. However, all that said, if NaNoWriMo is a good fit for you, if it's something you enjoy doing and whatever, more power to you. I'm not here to tell you that the thing you love is crap. I'm just reminding all of us that it's not great for everyone. And I think there's a good chance, especially if it's not great for you, that it will actually do a lot more harm than good if you try to participate, especially if you get really caught up in doing it the way you're, quote, supposed to do it. So hopefully I'll give you some food for thought so you can make a more informed decision whether or not this is even something you want to do. So as I said, it's a celebration of National Writing Month, National Novel Writing Month in November. Through a contest. And again, the idea is you write 50,000 words in November, which is 30 days. And there is or are a prize or prizes for, quote, winning it. But honestly, every year I go and look at what the prizes are, and it's never anything I want or need or anything that would motivate me to do this if I didn't already want to do it. So I really doubt many people, or if anyone, is doing it for the prizes. It's not like you win money. Now, if there's a cash prize, if you could win $10,000 or $1,000, then yeah, sign me up. But again, if you're someone that's excited about doing NaNoWriMo, you're probably not doing it for the prize anyway. You're doing it for other reasons. So I think, and this is all just my opinion, and my opinion is informed by listening to writing podcasts and watching writing YouTube videos and reading writing blogs for years and years and years and hearing people talk about NaNoWriMo every year. So this is just kind of a distillation of everything I've heard that has formed my opinion. None of this is official because I actually, in preparation of this episode, or for this episode, I tried to do some research into NaNoWriMo on their actual website, and there's actually very little information there, at least that I could find in the obvious places, as to why NaNoWriMo is a thing or what it's supposed to accomplish or anything like that. So this is all just my opinion. So take it with a grain of salt. But here's what I think. It seems to me that the idea of NaNoWriMo, the contest again, for this episode, every time I say NaNoWriMo, I'm talking about the contest, even though that really refers to the National Novel Writing Month, which is just a month on the calendar. It doesn't have to have anything to do with the contest. But the contest has co-opted that, or maybe they made that term up. I don't know. I don't know the history of it. Again, I didn't find any of that on the website. Not that I spent a ton of time looking. So I'm not saying it's not there. I'm just saying it's not in the obvious places like the About page and the front page and things like that. So I think the idea of this is to give you a kick in the pants to get going and actually start writing this novel that you've been saying you want to write and you just haven't done it. That's what it seems like to me. Like that's the whole point of this is, for those people that have been saying for a long time, oh, I want to write a novel, or, oh, I have this novel I want to write, and they just haven't just buckled down and done it for whatever reason. Like this is a way to get you to do it, to give you a kick in the pants, give you some motivation to say, hey, buckle down, write 50,000 words this month. And there's going to be a bunch of other people trying to do it too. So you can have a community and have some support and read each other on and cheer each other on and all that stuff. And I've heard it touted as a way to get you going on your novel if you've been putting it off. The idea here is the challenge is a goal to work towards. It's a specific goal, a specific word count, a specific amount of time. And again, you have a whole community of other writers who are doing this that you can network with and share your successes and failures with. And, for a lot of people, it makes something easier to do if they're doing it with other people, even though ultimately writing is a solitary activity. You can't really write with other people. I mean, you can, but ultimately you're writing by yourself, even if you're in a room with other people. So I think that's the idea behind it. I think that idea actually is pretty cool. The idea of like, hey, let's take a month and let's devote it to writing novels, and everyone who is writing a novel or wants to write a novel can all kind of band together and do it together. I think that's a fantastic idea. However, I think the execution and the way they set up the contest and the actual quote rules of the contest and the goal and the challenge and all that are a pretty poor fit for a lot, or possibly even most, people that are actually in the situation that we're talking about, where they've never actually written a novel, but they want to, and they need a motivating factor to get started. I also don't think it's a great fit for those of us that have written a novel or we've already started one, because most people, it's probably not going to fit your writing style, and you're going to have to go outside of the way you normally do things and what works for you to follow the quote rules of this competition. So in that way, it seems very self-defeating to me. But the idea behind it, if I'm right about what that idea is a cool idea. It's poor execution. It's also not a great fit for those who are already making progress on a novel, because kind of the idea is you're starting a new novel and, quote, finishing it in November. So, if you're halfway in a novel like I am, you're not really doing that. Now, I could say, I'm going to write 50,000 words towards my novel I'm already working on in November. And some people do that, but that won't even work for me personally, which I'll talk about in a minute. So there are plenty of people every year that jump on the NaNoWriMo bandwagon. So like I said, there's tons of stuff out there discussing that side, the positive side of Nano and why you should do it and why it's awesome and all that. So, that's been covered. So I'm trying to cover the other side of the coin. I don't think there is much of a bandwagon for people who don't do Nano, or for whom it's not a good fit, or for people that don't like it or think it's a bad idea. So this may all come across as kind of anti-Nano, and I guess in a way it is, but it's just one guy's opinion. It's just my opinion. If you don't like it, take it or leave it. It doesn't matter. It's just my opinion. And again, there's plenty of pro nano stuff out there, so you can go listen to that if my anti-nano stance offends you. So first things first, the goal of NaNoWriMo is 50,000 words. In most cases, 50,000 words is not a novel. So even if you, in 30 days, write 50,000 words, in most cases, you are not going to have a novel at that point. It's not finished. You still have to finish it. You're not done. Now, this depends on subgenre. And again, this is a topic I'm going to visit in detail on a future episode, but different subgenres of fiction, as well as nonfiction, have different requirements as far as how many words a work should have to be considered a novel. There's a minimum and there's a maximum. So there's a range that your work needs to fall within if it's going to be considered a novel. If it's shorter than that, then it's either an unfinished novel or it's a novella or a novelette or a short story or something like that. If it's longer than that, then it's an unfinished novel that needs a lot of stuff cut out of it, or it's a novel that really should have been two or more novels and has been put together into one. It should be split up. So for instance, middle grade, which is, novels written for middle school aged children, a novel is 20,000 to 55,000 words. So if you're writing a middle grade novel, then 50,000 words will get you there. That'll be a novel as long as you don't cut too much out of the editing process. But I mean, if you get 50,000 words, it's hard to imagine cutting it down below 20,000. So yeah, if you're writing middle grade, then NaNoWriMo could work for you because you will actually potentially have a novel when you're done. YA, young adult, on the other hand, a novel is 55,000 to 80,000 words. So 50,000 isn't going to get you there for YA. If you want to write a YA, you're going to need more than 50,000 words, especially considering that you'll probably cut stuff out in revision. So, even if you push it to 55,000 words in NaNoWriMo, once you revise it, you'll probably be under 50 at that point, or you'll be right at it. So yeah, Westerns, I didn't even realize this was its own genre, but I guess it is. It's 50,000 to 80,000. So your NaNoWriMo could barely be a Western as long as the editing process doesn't shorten it any. Sci-fi fantasy, which is where I'm at. Again, I talked about this at the beginning of the show, 100 to 115,000 words. So at best, your nano book will be half of a novel. And you know what? I'll post a source for these numbers in the show notes. It's an article on writersdigest.com by people that know what they're talking about. But these are industry standards. So, you can argue about whether you like these numbers or not, but you can't really argue the numbers because these are the numbers. And yeah, keep in mind that a lot of times in the editing process, you're going to cut stuff out, especially a nano book where you're speed writing. There's going to be a lot of stuff that you're going to cut out of that. So, you're going to want your first draft to be a bit higher in word count than where you want to end up. So, if you're talking something like a Western, which is 50,000 to 80,000 words, and you have a 50,000 word first draft that you wrote for Nano, chances are pretty good that once you edit that and clean it up and make it somewhat presentable, it's going to be more like 45,000 words, if not 40,000, which won't be enough. Now, I know a lot of people do the competition, if not every year. They've done it once or more times and have some success with it. Of course, there are probably a lot of people who don't succeed or don't, quote, win. They don't get to the target on time. But for me personally, it's not for me. And like I said, I think it's kind of a bad idea for a lot of us, the way it's executed. And I think there's a very real potential that it will, instead of encouraging you, actually discourage you. And for more on that, see my recent episode on when I changed my word count, my daily word count goal from 2,000 words to 1,000 words, and how much that helped me and how much failing to hit my goal every day hurt me. Because for a lot of people trying to do NaNoWriMo, that's going to be their experience, is a lot of failing to hit their goals, whether it's a daily goal or a weekly goal or just the final monthly goal. Because it's a pretty high word count for most people, I think, to be able to write 50,000 words in 30 days. And that's assuming you write every single day for the month of November, which, let's face it, most of us have other things we need to do. We can't just take a whole month off of life and just write all the time. So let's look at some numbers. I like numbers because as long as you're careful about what exactly the numbers are saying, numbers don't lie. So November has 30 days. Our goal is 50,000 words if we're going to do this competition. So if you write every single day, 30 days, you average that out. How many words do you need to write each of those 30 days to hit 50 words by the end of November? You need to write 1,667 words per day, average, to get to 50,000. Now, just looking at that, I could say, I could do that because there's a lot of days I write more than that. And right now, I think my average, I haven't looked at my average recently, but the last time I looked at my average words per day, it was 1,100 something words per day. And I don't write 7 days a week. I write 6 days a week. So that's only 500 days or 500 words more a day and one more day a week. Surely I could push myself that far. Well, to know more of what I think about that, again, listen to my recent episode about changing my daily writing goal. And I think you'll know what I think about that, about increasing my goal. My goal right now is 1,000 words a day, and I write 6 days a week. So I would have to increase it by 667 words a day and write an additional day every week to get there. And yeah, I'm not going to do that. That'd be a terrible idea. So let's say you're going to be a little more realistic. Let's say you have a job, or maybe you have kids, or you're in school or something. So you can't commit to writing every single day, 1,600 and some words. So you decide you'll take 2 days off a week. Maybe that's, if you work a regular 9 to 5, maybe that's the weekends you'll take off. Or, if you're in school, maybe that's the weekends you take off. Or if you're a server in a restaurant and you work all weekend, maybe you take, a couple days during the week off or something. But let's just say you'd say, I'll write 5 days a week during November. So I looked at the calendar for this year, 2021, and you would have, if you took the weekends off, you would have 22 writing days. So you would need, on each day you wrote, you would need an average of 2,273 words per day. That's getting up there. I started out trying to do a daily writing goal of 2,000 words per day, and I could do it on the days that I actually wrote, but it was so difficult, especially when I didn't know exactly where I was going, which is going to be the case with NaNoWriMo unless you spend a month or two beforehand outlining it, which kind of seems like cheating. But unless you do that and you already have an extensive outline to where you know what every scene's going to be ahead of time, to do over 2,000 words a day, every day for 30 days, even with the weekends off. So for 22 days, that's going to be rough. Unless, again, you have nothing else you need to do and you can spend all day on it. But even then, it's going to be exhausting. Now, let's say you're like me and you're not going to take the weekends off. You're just going to take 1 day off a week. You're just going to take Sundays off. You then would have 26 writing days in November, and you would need an average of 1,924 words per day. So still almost 2,000, which for me, I've learned is, at least right now, is too much. It's way too much. So again, I just did the episode. It was episode 38. I'll link it in the show notes about setting realistic writing goals and why it's really important to find the right goal for you. And unless you're one of those lucky people where the right goal for you is one of those numbers I just listed and it lines up with how many days you can write a week, this isn't going to be for you unless your number is significantly higher and doing NaNoWriMo is like slowing down for you. But for most of us, especially beginning or less experienced writers, these numbers are going to be a lot higher than what's comfortable for us to do in a day. So if that's you, this isn't a good idea. It's going to do more harm than good trying to do this. And, I give my story with this in episode 38. You can listen to that and, see where I'm coming from all this. Now, some would argue that even if you don't, quote, win Nano, that you still win because you wrote something. And especially, if you're someone who's been saying you want to write a novel for months or years and you haven't done anything, and this gets you button chair, hands on keyboard. And even if you only write 30,000 words or whatever it is, you still wrote a bunch of words that you didn't have before. And in that sense, you won, even though you didn't beat the challenge. And that's true to a point. Again, especially if you're that person that's never written before and you've been putting it off and this actually gets you doing it. That's true to a point. However, if you don't win the challenge, not only are you failing to hit your 50,000 word goal for the month of November, so that's a failed goal, that's a failure, but you've also failed to hit a goal every single day that you didn't hit your average word count needed. Because, most people that do this, I think that's how they approach it, right? I mean, that's the logical way to approach it, right? You decide how many days you can write a week or how many days you can write in November. And then you take 50,000 and you divide it by that number to figure out how many you need to write each day to make it. And then every day you don't hit that number, the next day or some other day, you're going to have to write more to make up for it, right? So every day you're not hitting that average, whatever it is, you're feeling like you failed. You didn't reach your goal. So I feel like, especially for someone writing their first novel or someone who's fairly new to writing novels, that's a lot of failure to swallow, and it's not going to taste very good. It's going to give you an upset stomach, and you're not going to feel good about writing or about your book. And yeah, I don't see it being terribly motivating. Definitely far from ideal. You'd be much better off committing to a more realistic goal, whatever that is for you, and actually succeeding at that every day for 30 days. I think honestly, I just came up with a really easy solution to this. I think a better NaNoWriMo challenge would just be write every day in November and not even have a word count, or commit to a certain number of days. Like, I'm going to write, 6 days a week, every week in November, or 5 days a week, or whatever it is. That's what it should be. Everybody should be setting a goal for themselves and committing to that. And if you hit that, then you win. This whole one size fits all doesn't work. So I don't think this Nano challenge is terribly helpful or useful for a new writer. And I think it'll actually be detrimental to most of them. Or at the very least, it's not as helpful as it could be. It's also not terribly helpful for someone who isn't a new writer or someone who is already working on something like myself. The rules are you have to start a new novel, technically, or at least get 50,000 written on a novel in November. And again, if that fits your writing pace, that's awesome. But if it doesn't, then what good does it do you? So I've never done NaNoWriMo. When I first heard about it, I was like, oh, that sounds cool. I want to do it. And then I did the math and figured out what I'd have to do every day. And I knew I didn't even, I just gave up on the idea then. I'm like, oh, this isn't going to work for me. This isn't fit my process. And, here I am now, years later, working on my third novel, and a little wiser, I think, a little more experienced. And it's far, far more important to me to hit the goals I've set that work for me, which right now is 1,000 words per day, 6 days a week, than to hit this arbitrary goal that someone else came up with that still wouldn't give me a novel. Even now where I'm at 60,000 words. Even if I could write 50,000 words in November and add it to the 60,000 I already have, I still wouldn't have a full novel. It wouldn't finish it. I'd still have more to write when November was over. And I'd be super stressed out and burned out and probably want to take a month off of writing altogether at that point. Also, if you're actually wanting to write novels professionally, which is what I would like to do, I think for a lot of people, trying to bang out a first draft in 30 days is probably not the way you'd want to approach that. And it's probably not the way you would approach it. Now, I know there are some writers out there that do that or have done that. Again, everybody's different. So there are probably people out there that this is a piece of cake for. But for me, and again, that's what I'm talking about today, and I'm using myself as an example here to illustrate that not everybody's the same, and this isn't going to work for everybody or be a good idea for everybody. For me, that is not anywhere near how I would ever approach writing a novel, unless I just wanted to write a terrible novel, which I don't know why I would want to do that. But honestly, I couldn't think of a better way for me to write a terrible novel than to say I have to write the first draft in a month, or I have to write the first draft at a pace of 50,000 words a month, however long that would take. Yeah, that'd be a horrible novel, I'm sure. So like I said, I think the idea behind this, if it is what I assume it is a good one. But I think the details of the challenge and the execution could be a lot better. And if you actually wanted to serve the majority of writers that are supposedly you're trying to help with this. For one, have an actual word target that would actually be a novel when you're done. Like I said, in a lot of genres, 50,000 words is not a novel. So it's not terribly useful. Have your target, if you're writing sci-fi, a target of 100,000 words would be a lot more useful, or better yet, 110 or 120. I think it would also be better to do a length of time greater than a month, because most people don't write a novel in a month. Who writes a novel in a month? Not very many people. I've listened to a lot of writers talk about how they do what they do, and I can only, off the top of my head, I can only think of one published writer that I've heard say, and they wrote a volume, anything close to, a first draft in a month. And I don't even know if that's how they always do it, or that's just how they did a particular book or what. But even if that's how that person always does it, that's one person out of, I don't know, 20, 30, 40, 50 writers. I don't know. It's not very high percentage. So yeah, I think it'd be better to have an ultimate word target that's actually a novel. So for most genres, that would be significantly more than 50,000 words. And to accommodate that, to give you more than a month to do it. But even 50,000 words, I think you should have more than a month to do it. But I guess that's just not as catchy as 50,000 words in a month. That's not, that doesn't make a great headline, I guess. Ultimately, I kind of feel like this whole thing gives the wrong impression to people about novel writing and what it's all about and how it works. This is a marathon, not a sprint. This kind of thing would make a lot more sense with a short story, maybe, or maybe a novelette, or maybe a novella, maybe. But for a novel, it just seems bizarre. Also, and I think I've mentioned this on the show, and I know nothing about this. I've never read someone's draft that they wrote for Nano. So this is just me hypothesizing. I have no idea. But I have to wonder at the quality of these books that people write for Nano, the people that actually win and write 50,000 words in 30 days, assuming that's even a novel, which it's probably not. But assuming they write a 50,000 word story that has a beginning, middle, and an end, and ends, I have to wonder how good that thing is. So let's say you've written more than one novel in your life, so you have something like a frame of reference for comparison. And let's say you've written 3 novels, okay? And let's say the third novel you wrote for Nano. How does the first draft of that third novel compare to the other 2 that you wrote, however you would normally write a novel, presumably taking a lot more time? I mean, as I showed before when I broke down the averages, the word count goal is pretty high. No matter how many days you write a week, even if you just write every day a week, it's still a fairly high word count per day that you need to hit consistently for 30 days to get to 50,000 words. And I suspect that number is a bit higher, maybe significantly higher than what most writers comfortably do in a day. So if that's the case, then you're pushing yourself every day, unless you're just a very fast writer by nature. So every day you're pushing your word production beyond what you would comfortably do to win Nano. So, I mean, maybe, those will just be the most awesome words you've ever wrote, the ones that you pushed yourself to write to win Nano. But I think the more obvious assumption here is that the quality is going to suffer. When you're just cranking out words to crank out words, those words aren't going to be as well thought out. They're not going to, the story's not going to be as good as one that you wrote at your own pace. I assume. I don't know. My assumption would be if you're someone like me who maybe writes around 6,000 words per week, which, I mean, I'm doing more than that, but that's my goal. So I can confidently say that I can write 6,000 words per week, week after week after week. For someone like that, where Winning Nano would require you to write about 12,500 words per week. So you're more than doubling your production per week for 4 weeks in a row. It stands to reason that that first draft would be in a much worse shape, a much rougher shape than the one you wrote more naturally. So anything you may have gained through this process of writing this first draft, in other words, you wrote it down more quickly, you got more words faster, you got further toward your total word count, more quickly. Anything you may have gained from that, you're going to lose that in the editing process because it's going to take a lot more work and a lot more time to get that first draft to where it needs to be, to where you can submit it to an agent or an acquisitions editor. So at best, I think you'd come up even. Maybe you write the first draft in half the time it would normally take you, but now the editing in the following drafts take you twice as long because it's a lot more of a mess and there's a lot more work you have to do to make it presentable. So you come up even. I'd be willing to bet if this were something like we could get statistics on, I'd be willing to put a little bit of money on saying that it would actually end up taking you more time in the long run to get that nano novel ready to publish than it would have if you would have just written the thing at your own pace, assuming you stayed motivated and did it and didn't quit or take a bunch of time off, but if you wrote, your 1,000 words a day, 6 days a week, and then you edited it all the times you needed to do and workshopped it and everything you needed to do to get a submission ready, I'll bet that would take you less time than if you did it nano style and then, did all the stuff you need to do to get that submission ready. That's my assumption. I mean, I feel like there's just going to be this huge temptation when you have this huge word count hanging over you to just fill the page with words, to fill it with fluff, to hit those goals every day. So how many whole sentences or paragraphs or even chapters are you just going to take out of this thing in the revising process because it's not great because you were just saying whatever you could think of to put words on the page? And, like I talked about already, 50,000 words is already not enough for a novel in most cases. And then you're going to take out a pretty significant chunk of that because you were speed writing during revision. Because, there's going to be lots of unneeded and redundant or just badly written stuff in there that you're going to have to take out. So you could end up with significantly fewer words even than that. So now you're even farther behind. So it seems like in most genres, you'd end up with closer to half a novel at best. Definitely not a novel. So I'd love to find an alternative to this, something that people do as a community during November to write a novel that's actually more useful to more people who are actually wanting to write novels that they're going to publish and not just write 50,000 words to say you wrote 50,000 words and then you never do anything with it. And it lines up better with how a lot or even most writers actually write novels. I'd love if there was something like that out there. I'd love to participate in something like that. So if you know of anything, let me know. And then I will pass it on the show to everyone else. Because I have a feeling I'm not alone in this. Maybe I am. Maybe I'm the only person. I'm just a really slow writer. And I'm the only one with this issue. But I don't think so, because I've seen some professional writers on Twitter and other places mention their daily word counts. And I've seen ones that are significantly lower than mine, like 500 words a day or even less. So yeah, I don't think I'm alone. Now, I will say there is Camp NaNoWriMo, which is, I think, done by the same organization. It's a nonprofit. And that happens in April and June. So there's 2 Camp NaNoWriMos. And that is kind of more like what I'm talking about, because with that, you just set your own goal, whatever it is. And it's just, do you hit that goal or not? So that is something that is more like what I'm talking about, but it's not during National Novel Writing Month. So you're missing out on this big national thing if you do it, Camp NaNoWriMo in April or June. So I don't feel like it's something you could do, and I probably will if I'm working on a first draft of some kind at that time. Or actually, I think with that, you can even do it with editing. You can commit to editing so many words in the month or whatever, which is really cool. Like Camp NaNoWriMo sounds really cool. It's more like what I'm talking about, where you can set the goal that works for you, and that's cool. But it's not in November. So I don't think it's a good replacement for NaNoWriMo, but it is something else you can do at different times of the year. So ultimately, it seems to me that Nano's for the person who wants to write a novel or thinks they do, but it's never really putting real effort into it. But unfortunately, the way it's set up, I don't think it actually serves that person well at all, or at least not nearly as well as it could if it was thought out better, designed better. I think for a lot of people in that situation, it's actually going to be counterproductive and harmful and damaging to their confidence and their ultimate long-term productivity and the likelihood that they're going to continue writing this novel and finish it or write additional novels. And for those of us already writing, doing it, it's unfortunately not really useful at all unless we just make our own rules and ignore the contest entirely, or it happens to fit our writing pace. So something that's interesting about this, because I wanted data, you know me, I love data. I love my numbers. On the website, they do have numbers for how many people participate every year, but they don't tell you how many people win or how many people succeed at the challenge and how many people don't, and how many people give up and don't even finish, don't even write the whole month. They don't share those numbers for some reason, or at least I couldn't find them. So I'd really be interested to know, what is the percentage of people who join the challenge at the beginning of November and finish it and reach the goal? What percentage of people actually, quote, win, versus the percentage of people who either just give up at some point and don't even, write through the whole month, or they write through the whole month, but they don't reach the 50,000 words. I would love to see those numbers. Personally, and maybe I'm a cynic here, but I think that the fact that these numbers aren't shared, that they aren't on the site, kind of tells us everything we need to know right there. I'd be willing to bet that the number of people who reach the goal are far less than 50% of the people who say they're going to do the challenge on the 1st of November. And I suspect that the percentage of people who, quote, win NaNoWriMo, not only is it below 50%, I suspect it's actually probably quite low, like disturbingly, distressingly, discouragingly, that's the word. Wow, look at all those adverbs. Discouragingly low. I mean, think about it. If the percentage of people who won was remotely encouraging, don't you think they'd be hollering it, from the mountaintops? 75% of people succeed at NaNoWriMo. That would be on the site in big, bold letters, I would think, if that number were remotely good or something that would motivate people to do it. So the fact that they don't tell you that, I think says a lot. So they tell you how many people participate, but that's it. There's also a logical fallacy here. I don't remember what it's called, so maybe one of you can let me know, who is better versed in psychology than me. It's been too long since I took psychology. I don't remember. But I'm pretty sure there's a logical fallacy about, just based on human nature, that you are far more likely to hear from people online and elsewhere, for instance, for NaNoWriMo, who succeeded and met the goal, than you are to hear from people who didn't succeed. So if you're just, looking at writers on Twitter and looking at, on November 30th or October 1st, all the people saying, I won NaNoWriMo, it's going to seem to you like a lot of people are winning. But that's a fallacy, because the people who don't succeed are much less likely to advertise that and to tell everyone on Twitter, I failed at NaNoWriMo. I only got 20,000 words, or I only got 30 or 40 or whatever it is. Those people are a lot less likely to brag in public than the people who, quote, won. And you're even less likely to hear from the people that were completely discouraged and or demoralized by this whole process. You probably won't hear from any of those people unless they're also angry about it, and then you might hear from them. But if they're just completely demoralized and this has convinced them that they don't have what it takes to be a novelist, yeah, they're probably not going to advertise that on Twitter. So you got to wonder, how many people are there that attempt NaNoWriMo and fail, and you just never hear from them? I kind of wonder how many people attempt it and never even tell anyone they're attempting it. Because honestly, I feel like if I did do nano, that's probably what I would do. I'd be like, okay, I'm going to do this, but I'm not going to tell anyone I'm doing it. If or when I win, then I will tell everyone I did it and I won. But, if I just don't mention it and I just quietly do it on my own, then if I don't make it, then nobody needs to know. And I don't have people asking me, so Lex, did you win NaNoWriMo? That's probably how I would approach it if I were going to do it. So you got to wonder how many people are like that. So again, I'm not saying that NaNoWriMo is straight out bad or harmful, although I think it is probably harmful to some people. But it definitely isn't for everybody. And I can see how it could be a detriment to some people in some situations, especially if they take it too seriously and they don't have someone there to tell them that it's a stupid contest. It doesn't really matter at all. It's not like there was real money on the line. It's not like winning or not winning this says anything to you or about you as far as can you be a writer and can you be successful? Because again, I think most published writers that you know of don't do NaNoWriMo because they're too busy doing their job. So again, I did a whole episode 38, I'll link it in the show notes, about finding a good writing goal for myself and why for me, actually decreasing what I was trying to do every day has led to me writing way more words per week than I was before. So I took my original writing goal was 2,000 words per day. I cut it in half to 1,000 words per day. And even before I started writing 6 days a week, I was writing more words per week than I was when I was trying to write 2,000 words per day. And the reason was, as soon as I switched my goal to something that was right for me, that was achievable, I was writing every day because I was motivated and feeling good about what I was doing. When the goal was too high and I was either not reaching it or struggling to reach it, I was not writing every day. In fact, there were a few weeks that I didn't write at all. There were weeks that I only wrote one day. I mean, it was bad. And, I'm sharing my progress bar in the show notes now. So you can go back through the past episodes and you can see how much progress I was making week to week. And you'll see there are weeks where I only wrote like 1,000 words in a whole week. I do that every day now. And it's all about state of mind and being motivated and feeling like you're succeeding instead of feeling like you're a failure. And I suspect that NaNoWriMo makes a lot of people feel like failures. And that's not good for anyone. So there we are. There is my counter argument. So, hey, if you know someone who maybe has done or is doing nano and they don't win and they're feeling bad about it, maybe, tell them about this episode. Maybe they'll feel a little better after listening to this. Or if you know someone who kind of wants to do nano, but they know that they'll never be able to do it, like someone like me, where they're like, yeah, I know me, I know my process, I know what I can produce. And I mean, I could try to do this, but I won't make it. Maybe share this episode with them, because if that's you, you're not a failure. Nobody cares about NaNoWriMo. When you go to try to get published, no one's going to ask you if you won NaNoWriMo or not. Or if they do, it's not going to affect anything. It's not going to be like, oh, sorry, if you've never won NaNoWriMo, we can't publish you. Nobody cares about that. Nobody cares how long it took. All they care about is how good is the story. How good is the book you wrote? That's all that matters. I mean, there's limits. You don't want to take 10 years to write every book if you're going to try to, do it professionally. But, there are lots of people that take a year to write a book or more. That's fine. You don't need to do it in a month. It's just so crazy. Now, maybe most people that do NaNoWriMo, it's no big deal. And they know going into it that they're not going to make it. And it's not a big deal when they don't make it. And that could be. I'm not really part of the NaNoWriMo crowd, so I don't really know kind of what the vibe is as far as that goes. But I do know from personal experience that setting a goal and failing to reach it, no matter how seriously you think you take that goal, doesn't feel good. And it's not helping you. It's not motivating you. It's doing the opposite. And you're much better off setting a realistic goal and achieving it. Like I said in episode 38, my recommendation to you, if you know what your average word count per day is, if you track that, set your daily writing goal slightly below your average. So the last time I checked, my average was 1,100 words, 1,150 some words or something like that. And my daily goal is 1,000. So it's below my average. Because again, you can always go beyond your goal. And I usually do. Most days, it's rare that I only write, well, I've never only written 1,000 words. I was writing today and I just happened to check my word count at the end of a paragraph, and I was at exactly 1,000 words for the day, which is the first time I've ever seen that. It was like exactly. But I kept going because I had some things I wanted to get out. But it's rare that I'm even, 1,100, between 1,000 and 1,100. It's usually 1,200, 1,300, 1,400, 1,500. There's been, at least a couple days in the last 2 weeks that it was like 2,700, 2,800. So, you can go beyond your goal as often as you want. But the idea is to minimize the days that you don't hit the goal, because those days you're not going to feel so great about what you're doing, especially when you're having those days over and over and over again, which is what was happening to me. So since I set my goal at 1,000 words, I have not failed to meet it once. And so I feel really good about what I'm doing, and I don't feel the discouragement and the despair that I was feeling before when the goal was twice as high and, I was writing 1 or 2 or at best 3 days a week. Now I'm writing 6 days a week. So yeah, it's kind of like the tortoise and the hare, I guess, now that I think about it. Everybody knows that old fable, right? When it comes to writing a novel, being the tortoise is definitely the advantage. Now, maybe a short story, you could be the hare and, be awesome. And maybe even that would be better, would be the ideal, because it's a lot shorter and you can just bang that out in one sprint. But a novel, you want to be the tortoise, not the hare. All right. Enough of that. If you would like to let me know what you think of this episode, you can email me at lexoutloudpodcast@gmail.com. Now, I'm not asking for people to give counter arguments of why they think NaNoWriMo is great, because again, that's all out there. There's tons of that out there. Just do a Google search for NaNoWriMo and probably everything that comes up will be for NaNoWriMo and in support of it. So there's plenty of that. So I'm just trying to give the other side here. But if you have stories that you'd like to share, I'd love to hear them. Or if you have any data you'd like to share, if you've done NaNoWriMo, like how many words you got, and did you win or not? How easy or difficult was it? If you didn't, how did you feel about that? Did it bother you at all? That would be interesting to hear. But yeah, please not a bunch of emails of people trying to tell me why NaNoWriMo is awesome and I'm wrong. Because first of all, it's a thing of opinion, and second of all, I'm not going to change my mind on this. I've been doing this for a while now, and part of why I'm so happy about how things are going now is I'm finally figuring out what works for me, and I know without a shadow of doubt it doesn't work for me. And there's nothing that you can say that's going to change my mind, because you don't know me like I do, and you don't know my process like I do. And that's fine, because it doesn't have to work for everybody. Everybody's different. I say this in episode 38, but my goal of 1,000 words is not going to work for everybody. My intent is not to say everybody should write 1,000 words a day. No, my intent is to say everybody should figure out what works for them and do that every day. If it's 1,000 words, awesome. If it's 2,000, awesome. If it's 2,500, awesome. If it's 500, awesome. If it's 100, awesome. Last week, I recommended the book Becoming a Writer, Staying a Writer by J.M. Straczynski, and he recommends starting out, I believe the goal he recommended was 250 words per day. And I'm all for that. If you're brand new to this and you've never written a novel and you want to get going, I think that's a fantastic place to start, because I think most people who want to write a novel would be able to do 250 words per day. So I think that's a fantastic place to start. When you've hit that goal every day, that barring days you take off, when you've hit that goal every day for a few months, then you can raise it up a bit, but yeah, you want to start low, because it's better to succeed than to fail, at least if you want to keep doing it. Anyway, you can follow me on Twitter at LexStarWalker. You can call my voicemail 951-465-5391. And please join our community on Discord. You can find a link to that in the show notes at lexstarwalker.com/LOL. And before I start rambling again, I'm just going to say good luck to you. If you are participating in NaNoWriMo, the best of luck to you. If you're in the Discord, feel free to share your triumphs with us and your fails as well. Although I would say they're not fails, just because you're not hitting someone else's arbitrary word count. That's not a fail. But yeah, share your journey with us. I'd love to cheer you guys on if any of you are trying to do this, or whatever your goal is. If you just have a writing goal, feel free to share that. I don't do that every day because I assume people don't want to hear me every day say I wrote my 1,000 words. But if other people want to do that, I think that would be awesome. And if people start doing that, I could even make a separate room for it, because that would be a fantastic thing to do with our community on Discord. Is for those of us that are writing, is to encourage one another in achieving the goals that we set, whatever those are. That'd be great. All right. I will see you soon for another episode. Until then, keep writing.